All right, guys. So welcome to another episode of the Bluewater Cruising podcast. This one's a little bit different. Normally, the last few episodes we've done, we're interviewing cruisers that have been out cruising, getting their experience, their stories, which is amazing. This one, we wanted to shift things up a little bit for you guys, do something a little more educational, dive in a little bit into some of the gear and stuff that you're going to take to go cruising, specifically talking props and other stuff to do with the propulsion of your boat, moving it through the water when you're out there cruising. Super stoked today to have Brendan here. Brendan is from a company called AB Marine in Rhode Island. We met at the Miami Boat Show, had a brief chat there, had another chat a few weeks back, and he knows a lot about props, way more than I do. So I thought it'd be great to bring him on and see what we can learn about props and anything else that he knows about. I suppose it's all about the rear end of the boat that you guys are working with. Pardon the pun. It's 9 p.m. here at the moment. But so yeah. Anyway, over to you, Brendan. Brendan's in Rhode Island. I'm in Bali at the moment. So we're on other sides of the world, and we've finally managed to make it work. We were trying to make it work for weeks, and so now you're here. So yeah, take her away, Brendan. Let us know maybe a bit about who you are, how you got into this business, into props. It's quite a niche thing to be in.
It is. Yeah. Color. Yeah. Props, it's one of those topics that people they forget about because, it's under the water. No one looks at it. We're sailors. So we're focusing on, call it the sailing aspect. We're not worrying about, call it, motoring. But, for cruising, as everybody knows, that we, whether we like it or not, we end up doing quite a bit of motoring. So it's something, that propellers, they should be considered and should be, call it looked at, and pretty easily, you can have it optimized to your boat or your needs or what you're looking for. So yeah, here at AB Marine, that's what we try to focus on is cruisers, or racers, and basically, try to figure out, which prop, fits, which person the best and how they're using it. Yeah, just some background, on me. I've been in the marine industry my whole life. I had my father and my uncle. They're from New Zealand, and they came over back in the 70s and 80s, racing on the maxi yachts here in the Northeast. So, of course, it was kind of a, they brought me up in the industry and was a natural, call it like a progression there. So I've, did the whole dinghy sailing thing. I've worked as a captain on some race boats, been with EP15s, class 40s, different IRC boats and everything. So, yeah, pretty strong background, and have my own composite shop, building boats and doing refits, and was at Bristol Marine, which is a boat yard up here in the Northeast, for about 6 years, and then joined Jeff here at AB Marine about a year and a half ago. So it's kind of, all my background and experience, being able to apply all that to learning about propellers. So I'm not a naval architect, but I'm able to have access to, a lot of them, and I ask them a lot of questions. so I try to learn as much as I can and just try to pass that on to, people that, want to learn about props, and just try to help out as best we can.
So you've been in the prop, you've been in the prop business for about a year and a half yourself.
Yeah.
In the actual prop business. And then before that, you said you were into composites. Is that, you had your own shop?
Yeah. So I had my own shop for about 5 years doing, carbon and fiberglass, parts, some, production, some refits on boats, doing some actual boat building. So I came out of school, I got into that, and eventually got sick of grinding fiberglass and carbon dust. So,
props are a little bit cleaner, cleaner.
They're much cleaner. But kudos to the guys that, are boat builders, because it's a trade that's pretty difficult. And there's a few people that are still really good at it. It's something to be done. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I know that's a hard job. That
yeah,
stuff. Lots of chemicals and dust and sanding and all
it,
that stuff. So that's
yeah.
gnarly.
Yeah, but all that, has given me, call it, the background and experience that I can apply now to propellers, because I can, go out and, we can look at, call it, if someone has an installation, like if they have a full keel boat and they have a small aperture, what we've done is that we've recommended on how to, call it, improve water flow to the propeller. So talking to the customer on how to, call it, open up their aperture, how to grind it back, re-glass it in to allow more water flow to get to a prop, or just some other modifications, that that Jeff and I can, call it, help talk to a customer and make it, something that's fairly simple and break down for them.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Your background in that stuff, you're able to explain it to them to let them know what to do. And just because I think in our audience, we've got a mix of people that are, some people that are quite savvy about boats and understand them, and other people that are just getting into it. So just to maybe break down what you just said about the aperture for the prop
Right.
into layman's terms for those that are tuning in that don't have any idea what you're talking about. You want to break that down into more layman's terms?
Yeah, so that's, call it, so on, call it, old school full keel boats, like the old Hinkley's, like the Choi Lee's, where there's a big full keel that drops down, and then the rudder is, call it, at the trailing edge of the keel, and it's connected. And the only way that the builders back then were able to fit a propeller in was to have the engine super low in the bilge of the boat, and they would then run the shaft, call it, just directly aft. But then what they would do is that they would cut an opening in the keel itself, like a little, call it, oval shaped opening, and the shaft would come out there with your propeller. And that has some benefits to it, where it's, the propeller is protected, you're less chance to wrap a line up or a lobster pot. But of course the downsides to that are the performance side of getting good water flow to your propeller, because now you have a big keel in front of it, and you're also limited to, a lot of the times, with, call it, how large of a propeller you can put in the opening, because now it's this little compact space. And over the years, as engines have changed in terms of their horsepower output and their RPM, engines call it, over time, to fit within the EPA standards, they've actually gone down in RPM, which means that gives you a slower shaft speed, which we can get into, which gives you a larger prop. So it's all about just trying to help, optimize to those, to what boat the person has, and, just to try to fit within, call it, the opening or the aperture, as they call it.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, all right. So, a bit of background how you kind of got into the prop business. You guys are in the prop business. You deal with some of the in my understanding, the leading brands of certain types of props that are out there internationally in the world, like the best that you can get, basically, as far as folding props, or are what we could call like maybe high efficiency props for sailing, cruising, or racing. So I've got a few questions around these props. I know you've got some as you brought some props as props, which is great.
That's big.
So maybe let's start with I think because you've got the different types of props so again, for the people that are maybe not as up to speed, they might not even know that there's folding props or what there is. So what are the kind of main different types of props that
there's
people are looking at?
So you kind of have like three different, call it, types of props. You have your traditional fixed bladed propeller, which a lot of the time will come standard, from the factory on most boats, and call it, it's been around for hundreds of years. Super simple. Pretty good at generating thrust. But of course, for powerboats, that's great. But for sailboats, where we want to be also to reduce our drag, fixed prop, we'll call it, produce a lot of drag when we want to sail. So that's where, people started coming up with ideas of folding and feathering propellers. So,
okay. Are they all made
yeah,
of the same thing?
no. So,
Okay.
yeah, so there's been quite a few different iterations. Traditionally, they were made from bronze. Now, call it, you have hybrid metals, of where, call it, the most popular one now is called nibral, which is nickel, aluminum, and bronze. And it's a lot stronger than traditional bronze is, which bronze can, deform quite easily, but also you can, call it, bring the shape back. Um, so if you hit, piece of floating log, or, something, or wrap a line, they're more apt to deform than, call it, nibral would be. Of course, there's been stainless steel propellers. There's been different types of, people have tried plastics and composite plastics. But traditionally, call it the golden, the golden egg is that nibral material. It's easy to repair, it's super strong. It's, backed by Lloyd's. It's, call it the highest quality material that you can have. And yeah, it just works super well.
And and so if I was, let's hypothetically, buying a standard production cruising catamaran, a lagoon, leopard, privilege, whatever it is that
Mhm.
typically going to come with a nibral fixed prop on it, or is it going to be it'll be a fixed prop, I'm assuming, unless you buy some upgrade at the factory. But is nibral like the standard, or do they go with something else as the standard that's a bit cheaper, because
They'll
nibral, I'm assuming,
sometimes,
is expensive?
yeah, they'll sometimes go with something, yeah, that's cheaper out of the factory, either bronze or also aluminum. Of
Okay.
course, aluminum, yeah, under the water, it tends to corrode quite easily.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's all, it all comes down to exactly, what the customer wants, what the budget is, and yeah, what characteristics, they want to get. But yeah, typically out of the factory, it's something, that's yeah, call it cheaper, and it's just, here it is, here's the boat, and if you want to make upgrades, that's when you can do
Right.
that.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the base that we're dealing with on most production cruising boats, catamarans, monohulls,
Yeah.
whatever they are.
Mm-hmm.
Sail drive, shaft drive, doesn't matter. Same fixed props thrown on there. That's like that. Okay.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, cool. And then what are the other stuff that you can do as
Right.
far as, yeah.
Yeah. So then you have call it folding props. So we mentioned before about folding and feathering. So we'll first go into folding props, and all folding and feathering props, the basis of how they work is through centrifugal. That I uses, as the shaft starts to rotate, it either throws the blades open, or with a feathering prop, it then rotates the blades on their axis to, call it, go into a forward position. So we'll first go into, folding props. Like this is a Gory Race folding prop, and this is a two blade. So through centrifugal force, it throws the blades open and then starts to rotate. The other thing that's happening is when you start to throw the blades open and you start to push the boat forward, on the forward side of the blade, call it, is the low pressure side or the suction side, which also, call it, wants to hold the blade open as well. So that's, what is, call it, taking the horsepower from the engine room and transferring it into the water, to push the boat forward. So this is, called, your traditional two-bladed folding prop. Some of them are geared and some of them are not. This one happens to have gearing in it, so the two blades have a set of gear teeth on it. And so what happens then is that you can't have, call it, one blade open without the other. On some of the very first generation two-bladed folding props, they weren't geared, and what could happen is that one blade would open up and then one would stay closed, and then you would hear this big rattling and a vibration noise. so so then of course then you would try to turn the engine off, and then you try to restart it and try to get the blades to open up. But with a geared two bladed prop, it has to open up. One blade can't open without the other. So that's called the traditional two blade folding props. And then you get into the three blade folding props. So this one here is a Gory. There's also out there's Flexifold, Varifold. There's various, call it, folding prop brands out there. So again, this is when you're sailing, the prop is feathered. The water flow wants to push the blades closed, and so that you reduce your drag. Now, when you go to turn your engine on, it throws the blades open, and now you have, call it, the best of both worlds. You have low drag when you want to sail, and then when you need your prop, it can flip open. With the Gory, when you go into reverse, it flips around to the reverse position, so you get that leading edge in reverse as you did in forward.
That's a fancy thing. I had I have experience with Flexifold, and it didn't do that. Like my Flexifold, I had to put it in reverse, and it just folded straight back, which I think is I think it's a bit different than this setup here, if that's right.
Similar. I mean, all folding props, depending on if you have shaft or sail drive, to get them, call it, to fully feather, it can be good before you shut your engine off, just to bump them into reverse quick, just to stop them from spinning, and then back to neutral again. The Gory, the Varifold and Flexifold, again, compared to, the Gory is the only folding prop that has reverse pitch on it. So this is a right-handed propeller. This is your leading edge here. This is going forward. Then you go into reverse. And all other folding props, they only open one way. Where the Gory, the way that it's designed, it has a center gear here. So now you can flip the prop around when you go into reverse, and you get the same leading edge in reverse as you had in forward. So you're going to minimize prop walk. You're going to get actual full thrust in reverse, versus on the other folding props that when you go into reverse, they want to close up on them, because now the suction side is on the back side of the blade. So now it's wanting to, call it, close up on itself a bit, and then you have to give it more throttle to throw the blades open, kind of fighting itself, through centrifugal force and the actual low pressure that's pulling the blade backwards. So that's, there's, folding props, they're pretty simple. Nowadays almost all the brands are all geared. So, I mean, both Flexifold and Varifold and Gory are all great brands. They just have some different features between them.
Right. Question. This one is this is nibral? Is that what that's made of?
Yes. Yep. So all the props that we deal with are nibral. Super high end. Yes, they're more costly, but they're going to last a lot longer. They're a lot stronger. You can repair them easily. Any prop shop can fix them for you if you do impact a floating object or something. So the aluminum props or stainless props, they do have a lot of issues with corrosion. Just being in that environment, we put aluminum zincs on our boat, so if you have a prop that's aluminum, then it can have a tendency to
disappear,
to fizz away.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Tendency to disappear.
Like
yeah, for sure, man. Okay, so this is a folding prop, and I've got a question around these, but I think maybe before I do, because the question I have, but we can come back to it, is like the 2-blade, 3-blade, and how do you know what you need? I think most people are just like, oh, I had a 2-blade, so I'll throw a 2-blade on it because that's what it came with, sort of thing. But I don't is there a way to figure that out? But before we maybe answer that, or maybe you want to answer that first, do you want to talk about because there's folding, there's fixed, there's folding, and then there's the feathering, I think.
And then we have
you'd mentioned
feathering, right? Yeah. So feathering props are propellers, call it, where the blades, they don't fold back. They actually call it the blades. They rotate on their axis, and so instead of folding back to reduce resistance when sailing, feathering propeller will through the water pressure when you turn the engine off, the water pressure will move the blades, call it till they're pointing directly into the flow of water. So this is a very prop, which is
That's
made
like
by SPW.
airplane propeller, right? Sort of
Feathering propeller, sort of, yeah, right, yeah. Where it has a forward pitch, and then when you go into reverse, the blades actually flip around. So similar to like how a gory does, where the blades actually have a forward and a reverse pitch. So you get that again. You get that same leading edge in reverse as you did in forward. And feathering props, typically work on that. They have a call it center gear that all the three blades like they rotate on. So you can't have one blade that rotates out of alignment from another one. They all move together. So again, super robust prop. Simple, but yeah, they work really, really well and super low drag again. And the other thing too with these feathering props is that they have adjustable pitch. So if you want to, because every boat's different, even if you have the same engine, each boat will be slightly different in terms of what RPM you can hit, and depending on what RPM that you cruise at. So most feathering props have a pitch adjustment screws, like on here on the very prop. And your forward and your reverse adjustment screws. So you can call it fine tune in your pitch based on your boat and your setup, So it does come preset from the factory, but there is that option there where you can fine tune it, for people that really, really want to dial in their performance.
So it's not like an airplane prop in the sense that you can adjust pitch during like cruising. You have to do that like in the water, like you have to go in and turn that screw to adjust the pitch. It's not like
Correct.
Variable on the fly, so to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are on boats once you get over like let's say 60 to 80 feet and up. There's a couple brands out there that have controllable pitch props, where like an airplane you have that option where it actually works by having down the center of the propeller shaft there's a push rod. And if you think about it, like it's like a spinning hydraulic cylinder that's connected to your engine, and it moves a rod back and forth inside the shaft, and it then like rotates the blades around. So it's just like on a prop, it's like on a plane, it's like shifting gears in your car. Where if you're a big fishing trawler and you to load up with ice and head out to the grounds, you'll be at a different pitch than you would if you're actually dragging your net behind your boat. So,
Right.
That's like, you're talking much, much bigger boats than most of us are going to be cruising in.
Right. Cool. Okay. So we've got the three different types now of props. Like what should people be thinking about when they're trying to decide between, a fixed folding or a feathering prop?
Yeah. So like typical questions that I'll ask someone when they call up is, it all comes down to, what boat it is. So, is it a, call it, 20, 30 footer, where you're going to have, call it a lower horsepower engine. Or is it a 40, 50 footer? And, how are you using the boat? Are you, hopping on your dock, going out for an evening cruise or like a day sail? Or will you be doing, call it more long distance cruising, where you're going to be typically doing more motoring? And so, it's really 2-blade versus a 3-blade is where we like to start with, where once you get to that 25, 30 horsepower mark, a 2-blade doesn't have enough of, call it the blade area, to absorb all the horsepower from a motor. So at higher RPMs, or if you get into like a headwind or a head sea, the blade loading will get too high and you'll start to get like cavitation, and the 2-blade will have more slip as well. So call it for propulsion, a 3-blade is always, and then once you get up into a 4-blade, depending on the horsepower, are always going to provide you, call it, more grip in the water, and which in turn gives you better thrust.
Okay. Okay. And so that's like 2 blade to 3 blade. So it's a pretty good rule of thumb, like 25 to 30, anything over 25 to 30 horsepower, you should be thinking about a 3 blade rather than a 2 blade, because you're just going to be having issues otherwise. The issues you described. Did
Right.
you lose me again? No,
Yeah. I mean, once you get above that 25, 30 horsepower, you can use a 2 blade, but it's just not going to, call it, have the same performance as a 3 blade would, because you'll at the higher engine RPMs, but of course, most people aren't running at their, 80% and above on their, call it, in their engine. They're typically at the lower cruising RPM. But, again, if you start, bashing into a headwind or a head sea, and the boat starts surging and loading up, then you can get cavitation on a 2 blade. Doesn't matter which brand you have, they all will do that.
Interesting. Okay. I was gonna ask you, so like, what are the ballpark, like, are these all kind of the same price? Are they different?
Yeah.
How does that factor into it?
Yeah, they're all roughly about the same price. If you go, like, let's say if you had, your standard 40-foot, call it, cruising boat, 30 to 40 footer, you're going to be in the range, for a 3-bladed prop, anywhere from, 2,500 to, 4,000, somewhere in that range is, call it, the typical, for all 3 props.
What about a 40 to 50-foot cruising boat?
Then you're in that 36 to, let's say $5,000.
Okay.
And it totally depends on, and the range is because it totally depends on what horsepower the boat has and the gear ratio, and then that determines, call it, how big the diameter of the prop is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you can fold it so you have the efficiencies while you're under sail. You're going to get some more speed out of the boat, and then you get fuel efficiency while under motor. So there's an actual, cost savings to making that investment, so to say, to go from a fixed blade to that. I'm trying to understand why. What are the reasons that somebody would want to maybe do that?
The biggest one is drag, right? We want to reduce our drag for sailing as much as possible, because a fixed prop spinning away under the boat, is going to be, taking away, anywhere from a half knot to a knot and a half, depending on the boat and how big the fixed prop is. And, also too, you're getting turbulent water flow now that's passing over your rudder. So if you're trying to sail upwind, it's not going to be as efficient. So, those are call it, the big things there, especially, and then, then you have that fuel efficiency side of it, where if you can make gains, with like a gory or the auto prop, then, it's kind of a no-brainer, because we end up doing quite a bit of motoring when we're cruising, whether we like it or not. Especially
long distance cruising, I mean, there's got, like, you can motor for days sometimes if there's no wind, and that's
right.
Often that can be the best time to go, is when you're going to motor and not sail, because the other option is to sail in like really uncomfortable conditions. So it's better just to motor and get it over with. So yeah, and if you're doing that, like, depending on the size of your boat, like, could be a couple $1,000s in fuel that you're spending. So.
Right. Yeah. If you're a cruiser and you're going, all year round, right? Yeah, it can easily add up to that.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other things to keep in mind? Like, if somebody was going to go and they said, okay, I think we talked at the beginning that most of the production boats are built with they come with a fixed prop, unless you're like buying it new and about this and you ask them to upgrade the prop. Most boats are going to come with a fixed prop. So if somebody has a boat with a fixed prop, what's the process somebody should go through to figure out because we've got these options, like, which one is best for them? How do they go about figuring that out? What are some of the questions they should ask themselves, or data they should look at, or
questions? Yeah. So there's a bunch of different factors. You have, what boat it is that they have. Is it a catamaran or a monohull?
Let's assume it's a catamaran.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then you need to look at too, or the owner needs to look at how much space they have, because some boats can be restricted in terms of where the shaft comes out of the boat or the sail drive. How close is it to the rudder? Is there going to be enough room for a folding prop? Or that's where the feathering prop can have, call it a good advantage there, where it doesn't, call it need the space behind the propeller. Um, the other things to consider, are, call it, yeah, how much, if you're going to be, call it, doing shorter weekend sails or longer distance sailing, call it, where you're going to be motoring more. um, it's also of, what, call it, personality the person is. Do they like to tinker with things and like to fine tune and adjust, which you can do with the vary prop, with adjusting the pitch, or do they want it just out of the box and just to go with it, like the gory or the auto prop. So it's kind of too that, also too, how much, call it, do you want to deal with the maintenance side? Because some of them can have more maintenance or require more maintenance than others. So there's, it's kind of like we like to use the joke, do you like chocolate or vanilla? It's kind of, some
Right.
people have experience with folding props already, and some have experience with feathering props already, and they like one versus the other. Yeah, so it's, when someone starts to look at the process, just call your prop shop and just, start to ask questions. You can, ask questions, explain to them your style of sailing, what you're looking for features. There's, because there are a lot of options out there, but you can, call it, simplify it pretty quickly.
And then is it a process of, like, let's say they're talking to you guys about this. Do you just like
Mhm.
ship the props out to them and it's something that's relatively easy to install yourself? Or does it
Yeah.
require some specialized labor to be able to do this?
No, no, no. It's super easy. Yeah, yeah. We have some videos online of us installing props. Also, the instructions. But I would say the majority of our propellers are installed by, call it, the boat owners.
Okay.
Because yeah, it's simple. You just, it's just turning some screws and some bolts. Um, and yeah, it's fairly simple once you watch the video or read through the instructions on it.
Cool. Okay. And they
Hmm.
obviously, there's variants we talked about that are like on shaft drives, and then there's variants for sail drives, because if it's a cat, the
Hmm.
majority of these cats these days are sail drives, these
Right.
production cats. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming all three things we talked about work on a sail drive as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. All of them will work on the sail drive.
What which one of those three is the most popular, would you say? That are they kind of similar? For, and
Probably.
let me quantify
Yeah.
that. Let me say, for a cruising, for somebody that wants to do blue water
Mm.
offshore cruising in a catamaran, which is the most commonly chosen prop?
Yeah. Most commonly chosen one is definitely going to be the gory. That seems to be, call it, where people, are gravitating towards. One of the other big things that people are starting to do is to convert, to either hybrid or electric systems.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a big, call it, it's becoming more and more popular, and we're seeing that more and more. Some of the, call it, the trends or things to look out for, that when they look at electric motors, people tend to just look at the torque of the motor, and which an electric motor, call it, will put out higher torque, at starting out at a lower RPM, but torque is a part of horsepower, so whether it's a diesel engine or a electric engine, you know, horsepower is horsepower, horsepower is a result of the torque input and the RPM. So yes, the electric motor will have a higher torque at the lower RPM, or constant, depending on the torque curve of the motor. And we just find that people think that they can put in, call it, smaller electric motors than they, call it, should have.
And then
Because
they
people
burn
want
them
to shoot.
out
Well, no, what typically what happens is that they end up just not having enough horsepower to, call it,
to move as fast as
to,
they want.
right, yeah, yeah, to, really the big issue is in flat calm water. Yes, they can hit their hull
Yeah.
speed, but if they get into a thing where they got a motor into a headwind or a head sea, have to go through and push, through current, that then they say, oh, well, my boat, it slows right down, and they don't have they don't have to get through it. Because you want to shoot for that 4 to 6 horsepower per ton is kind of the rule of thumb for most sailboats. Yeah, and so that's just one thing when people want to go to electric, just check that you will have, call it, equivalent horsepower. It's not just the torque that you need to think about.
Right, and then don't blame the prop.
Yeah. The plop. Yeah. The amount of times that people say, "Oh, I got a vibration," or "Oh, my engine's not getting to, call it, its maximum RPM," they blame the prop, even though nothing's changed with the prop, or it's just. Yeah, we get so many phone calls where it's like, all right, there's a lot of other factors just besides the propeller.
So
I
cool.
mean, some of the stories, yeah. Just in the past year, I started to get like a vibration. Okay, well, is the prop? A prop doesn't just go out of balance unless it hits something or it gets damaged, or it got so rotted away from electrolysis or something like that. And then you find out, well, the guy's engine mounts are about 30 years old, and so it's like, okay.
Yeah, and the prop's like a year old.
Yeah, because all these props, I mean, whatever the manufacturers sell these props, they test every single one of them with, call it, a dynamic balance, so they know, it's going out, call it, perfectly balanced.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. What amazing information, man. I really appreciate you coming on to share it.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else around? I know there's a ton of other areas you could add value into, just around the drive systems themselves and stuff that we've talked a little bit about, but in the interest of time, let's leave it to props today.
Sure.
Any final, because again, the people listening to this are typically cruising sailors or people that want to go cruising. So any final thoughts just general thoughts for people buying a cruising boat, setting it up? Is it worth, in your experience of being in this business, and is it worth it? If you're buying a cruising boat and you want to go cruising, let's say in the Caribbean or something like that, is it worth it to explore this idea of throwing a different prop on the boat? And it's going to cost on it, let's say 40 to 50 foot boat, like $9 to $10,000, because you're, $4 to $5,000 aside, I guess. Yeah. So reasonable amount of money. You could spend that money elsewhere, but where in the order of priorities would it be for you if you were getting going?
If I was getting going, I mean, if you're going to be doing, again, it just goes back to, it's like tires on your car, where it's something that people will overlook, but it's something that you should really go back and just put some thought into, because it can make the difference of, hours or days in terms of your cruising, in terms of how quick you can get somewhere. It's so, for me, I would put it, of course, higher up in the chain. But yeah, I mean, it can make the difference of, getting home before sundown, or if, a storm comes up and you have to start to, motor into, a big head sea, it's the last thing you want is the boat, to, instead of be doing 2 knots or 3 knots in the boat, you can hear the prop cavitating, versus if you have a prop, call it, that's sized and optimized to your boat and your engine, you could be doing 6-7 knots into it. So yeah,
cool.
Yeah, those are kind of final thought.
I like that perspective. I think to me, it's similar to in sails. There's like a downwind sail, a nice downwind sail on a boat. Like boats typically don't come with a downwind sail. I really like Gennikers. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, Genniker is like a discretionary, like luxury upgrade, and a lot of people say that about props. But it's, at the end of the day, I think it's, for me, because I had folding props. It increases the enjoyment of the activity, when you're sailing, because you don't have the noise of the prop spinning, because with sail drives you can't put it in to lock it. You get a little more speed out of it, and like you said, you have that. I like that what you said there is knowing that you have an optimized thing for an optimized propulsion system. I suppose.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
bit of peace of mind there. So
Because usually, right. Yeah. Because usually from the factory, they put on, call it undersized or lightly sized propellers for your boat, because they don't want to, they want to have the engine, hit, call it the RPM when it comes out of the factory, and call it to have no issues. Not that, when that's correctly sized would give you issues, but, it's kind of like, it's just when it comes out of the factory, it's a cost thing. It's cheap to put a fixed on there and send it away.
Yeah. An aluminum fixed prop.
Yeah. About as cheap as you can get. And it starts to act as its own zinc.
Yeah. Fair enough. Cool, man. Well, that's, there was some really great stuff in there. I really appreciate you taking the time to hop on and share it. And so, people are going to be watching this. If anybody wants to reach out to you and maybe learn a little bit more about what you guys do and how you can help with props, sizing props, should they get folding props, variable props, max props, what's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, you can either give us a call or go to our website and shoot us an email. The website is ab-marine.com, so ab-marine. It doesn't hurt just to ask. Like, we are more than happy just to answer questions. It's not like you have to call us and, have to order a prop. Like, we will be happy to send you all the information, give you, pricing and everything, just to call it, just so that you can learn, so just feel free to reach out to us. Happy to help.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Brendan. And
right.
for those of you that are listening that want to just learn more about cruising in general, you as well, feel free to reach out to us. You can schedule a free 15-minute compass call anytime you want with one of our team. We'll have a look at your plan, your vision, what you want to do, and give it a once over and sense check it for you. We do run a few programs, one of which very soon we will have Brendan on the inside going into even more detail on this stuff with those that are inside of our community. So thank you again, Brendan. Been amazing having you on. My experience of you so far has been absolutely, guys, reach out to these guys. They want to help. They're not here just to sell you a prop. They want to make sure that you understand what you're doing and that you understand your propulsion system and how it contributes to the overall picture of what you guys are doing out there. So appreciate that. Appreciate the spirit of service. And it's been great having a chat. I'm glad we finally made it happen. So
yeah, thank you, Chris. Yeah, been good just catching you guys and kind of meeting your community and, just get to, we think it's a good thing what you're doing, positive for the whole, let's call it, sailing community.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that's it for this podcast. Thanks for attending another episode of the Bluewater Cruising Podcast. We will be back next month with another episode, and we'll see you guys then. Take care and chat soon.